And always great to welcome back to our show. A good friend of ours, a good friend to the show. He's been with us a few times before. Great talented musician and singer, and he'll be performing just up the road from us at the Largo Performing Arts Center coming up this Friday. That's March 16th, an 8 o'clock show where he'll be performing a lot of great jazz songs. And right now we're joined by Steve March Torme by telephone. Steve, it's been about a year since we talked to you. How you been?
It has indeed, and don't I sound terrific?
You do. The voice is still there, Steve.
Yeah,
after all these years.
I figured after a year, I thought it would all go to, in the dumper. It's still here, so I'm happy to report.
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. I go to these broadcaster luncheons down here, and you got a lot of the guys that maybe in retirement age, but you talk to them, and these guys that have been using their voice all these years, they sound the same as you remember them, 50 years ago from recordings. I guess it's the same with singers, too, right? As long as you keep working it out, the voice stays there, right?
I think so. I mean, it really depends on how well you take care of it, which really has to do with not even so much whether you abuse it or not, but really kind of how you sing. Mm-hmm. My dad took good care of his voice, never smoked, he never drank. And he knew how to sing properly. And I've pretty much done the same thing. I mean, I've been kind of lucky. I've got good genes. But I sit here and I read stories about John Mayer and Adele going through this throat surgery. Like, oh, what a drag.
Yeah.
And I know that he just canceled. John Mayer just, I think yesterday or this morning, canceled a 21-city tour because the growth on his vocal cords has come back. And I don't know if that's from improper singing or just bad luck. Who knows? But knock on wood, my chops are real strong, so I'm a happy boy.
Is it more of a breathing that when you sing correctly that you don't strain the vocal cord? Is that where it comes from?
You're absolutely right. It's singing from your diaphragm and not trying to reach up to sing high notes. But your comment was exactly right. It's like any muscle. The more you run 1 mile, you run that 1 mile a lot, it becomes easier. Now you can run 2 or 3 miles. It's just a matter of using that muscle a lot.
Yeah, I know. I've done play-by-play, and you use your voice a lot doing that too. And really, when you concentrate on talking from the gut, the voice doesn't feel tired at the end of the night, or at least doesn't feel strained. Maybe that's a better word to put it.
Very true. And you can't scream every time a guy hits a home run.
No.
Yeah, that's you can't do that whole hometown, oh my God, I can't believe it, every time something happens. That's a good way to keep your voice by not doing it.
Well, that's a whole show in itself, some of these play-by-play guys that you hear nowadays. I won't mention any names, but it's brutal when you hear them yell. And it's all about them where, the great announcers, it's not all about them. It's about the play. But that's a whole other show. You comment if you like.
Well, I agree with you on that, and not only play-by-play, but, for my money, sports talk shows in general are just brutal. They're brutal. And I watch ESPN every single day. I got to get my highlights and see what happened the day before because I have 2 young daughters at home. I can't always watch what I want to watch, so I catch up in the morning. And all I really want to see are the highlights. That's it. Just show me what happened the day before, but all the hyperbole and the nonsense in between and bad comedians trying to be funny on sports talk is brutal. And that doesn't count all the guys who do play-by-play that scream and yell. And you're right, the guys who were the best, I mean, Scully never lost his voice.
Right.
It was always about the game, not even always about the Dodgers, because he was never a homer. It was just basically reporting the game. And one of the few guys who I like, who really is a homer, but I like him so much because he's funny, is Euchre.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, you're up there with Euchre with the Brewers, so you get to hear him a lot.
Yeah, but, way before I moved here, I just liked seeing him on Carson because the guy was just funny.
Yeah.
There were a lot of guys that had, short baseball careers that went into broadcasting that weren't funny. Euchre's funny, so I enjoy him.
Yeah, you mentioned ESPN. That's been my biggest criticism of that. Everything seems to be either a joke or what's coming up next. You never see what next is.
Well, we could easily fill half an hour here with my criticisms of ESPN and how I feel about that show. And there are a few guys on it that are okay, but I guess they hire these guys saying, hey, you write your own stuff and try to be funny, and it's just so over the top. And I think it really is geared towards 9-year-olds to a large extent. And I hate to say that, because I really do. I love sports, and I love the fact these guys are enthusiastic. But man, it's really care what I have to say. So.
Oh, I think somebody will, but ESPN has its own agenda, and that's fine. And they make tons of money, so good for them.
Yes, they do. Yes,
you mentioned, you live up in the Wisconsin area, and I wanted to ask you when we kind of booked, our chat for today on radio. I know it's been a week or so, but the whole Ryan Braun situation, I guess, has died down a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that up there?
Well, it's died down. When he made his first plate appearance in their first spring training game, there was a good smattering of boos that came from the crowd. And the Bruins announcer said, well, here in spring training, you have a lot of transients who are down here to watch the game because people like to come down and, travel from all over to watch spring training. That's not necessarily what's going to happen in Milwaukee. And to the extent they are probably right. My view on that whole subject, you know what? I talked to somebody about this yesterday. Now, I know you love sports. And I know you're a pro at doing the radio, so you've got a lot more experience at this than I do. But I think I've mentioned to you, I host a couple of radio shows. Mm-hmm. And one is for the Music of Your Life Network, which, we have affiliates all over the country. And another one is here in Wisconsin. I was given a very long story, very, very short. When my new album came out, I contacted a bunch of radio stations here to see if I could get airplay. And one of them said they loved the songs. They said, yeah, give it. What else you got? We'd love to play your stuff. And they called me about a week later and said, would you do some station ID stuff? And I said, sure. Just basically, hi, this is D. Marsh Torme you're listening to. And 2 weeks after that, they said, how would you like to have your own show here? We love your voice. You seem to know what you're talking about. And I said, that's the key. I seem to know. And they gave me the drive time show from 3 to 7 on a station called 91.1 The Avenue here in Wisconsin. Right. Well, since that has happened, I have a regular show on during the football season every Thursday with Michael Finley, who's the starting tight end for the Packers. Sure. Yeah. And we talk about, whatever I can get him to talk about, which is not that easy. I mean, he's a sweetheart, but it's kind of pulling teeth. Well, as you know, Ryan Braun and Aaron Rodgers are good buds. I mean, they hang out together. They're two, good-looking young eligible bachelors who have both been MVPs in their sport, which is unbelievable. And, Aaron's had Ryan's back to this whole thing. My personal feeling on this, I was discussing it with somebody yesterday, I really do think that to a large extent in baseball, except for the recent era we have with McGuire and Sosa and Canseco, and Canseco openly said it. Yeah, of course I did steroids. I mean, it's not really a big secret. Take a look at me. Yeah. And he did it to gain strength and to put on muscle mass. But I really do believe that the guys that are still doing it at all, and again with Ryan Braun, I have no idea whether he did or not, obviously. And you and I both know that he made the system work for him and got it thrown out, whether he did or not. But I really do believe that if you and I, meaning you, Doug, and I, went onto a baseball field tomorrow, having not been on one in a while, put on cleats and played a 9-inning game, the day after tomorrow, our feet would be pretty sore. Yeah. And I don't care what kind of, shape these guys in, or they're in the prime of their lives. When you play 162 games of baseball on a baseball field with those cleats, your body is hurting all year long. And they'll be the first to admit it, with sliding and getting hit by the ball and travel and everything. I think the reason that most guys still do any kind of juicing is for recovery. And they'll be the first to tell you that. They say, look, I'm not trying to get bigger. I'm not trying to make my muscles bigger. I'm trying to not hurt as much. And certain steroids do allow you to recover from injuries more quickly, so you can bounce back when you've got a 4-game series and you're playing on a hard turf in the middle of August. Yes, it's against the rules, but I really do kind of understand why guys do this. And not saying that Ryan did or not, and who knows what really happened with that. I have a friend who's a voter for the Hall of Fame, and he's vehemently against the fact that guys cheat, that they do this. And I said, well, I understand that, but isn't it also cheating to have coffee? I mean, where do you draw the line? That's the whole point. If you need something to get you going for a game, you played 12 innings the night before, now you got a 2 o'clock matinee. I understand guys needing things sometimes to get up. I mean, guys used to smoke. Who's to say that nicotine wasn't a bit of a stimulant? I don't know. So it's a slippery slope to decide what guys can and can't do. I don't know.
Yeah, I know back in the...
What's your feeling on this?
I was going to say, back in the 70s, a friend of mine, I do, the show with, the sports show, Don Henderson, he broadcast the Phillies games, and back then in the 70s and late 60s and 70s, there was a big bowl of pills in the locker room. I think they call them greenies or bennies, whatever they call it, and players would take handfuls of those to get them through. I mean, not that that was right, but it's not new that steroids became something that players use. We use other things, in earlier times. Who knows what Babe Ruth used? I mean, he tended to enjoy himself off the off the field. I mean, who knows what they used back then? I just don't like the way that Braun kind of lawyered up, the way he kind of handled. He didn't really answer the question. Well, it may have been mishandled moving the test sample to the lab, but how did it get in your system to begin with? Or why didn't he say, well, give me a test right now, and I'll do another one right away? I mean, it just seemed like it was too much of a lawyered up thing.
I agree with you. Yeah, and I'm sure his agent said, look, keep your mouth shut, deny this because we beat the test, and we did that. He's not going to come out and say, and this is really what I think the guy should do. It's easier for me to say because I don't play professional baseball. But, if these guys come out and say, yes, I did that, and the problem I have is the fact that they are making it illegal. We should be allowed to do this. I can go have a couple of drinks afterwards. Mm-hmm. I can do this afterwards. I can get a prescription from a doctor for a stimulant. If I need this, it was in my system. But of course, I'm not going to do that. I just think that Major League Sports are hypocritical. I really do. I don't think you can keep telling football players, look, let's just be honest about this. If you don't keep up your bulk and you don't run a 4.2 or a 4.3 40 even as a lineman, or maybe 4.4, 4.5. But if you don't weigh 300 plus pounds, you're going to lose your gig. Period. You're an offensive lineman and you're getting run over by somebody who outweighs you by 30, 35 pounds. You're going to lose your job. And they do want guys to be big, and the sport is about collisions and this whole thing about the whole bounty thing that came up last week. Right. And that was just absolute nonsense. Like, who cares? Like, that doesn't go on in every team. The Saints got caught. That's all. A guy blew the whistle. But that goes on all the time. And, for them to come out with this pious attitude of, we're here to protect the players is a load of crap. And it always has been. Football players are dispensable, even including quarterbacks. As much as they want to protect quarterbacks, there are 10,000 guys in line for your job if you lose it. And football players know that. But there is a silent code. Keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. And I just think that the sport should be, they should be out front about it. The year that all those guys got busted in baseball for the steroids was also the year that they were setting home run records, and they wanted to because they wanted to get people back in the park. Sure. Because football had taken over popularity in this country as the number one sport. And for them to turn around now and say, well, we can't have that kind of thing going on. Who are we kidding?
Yeah, that whole bounty thing. Buddy Ryan was known for that back in when he coached the Bears and Eagles. I mean, he came out and told the press, he had a bounty on people. So nothing new there.
Right, and then they're not going to hit any less hard. That's the nature of the game. I talk to Jermichael about it every week when we're doing our show. He'd come in, and he's a big boy. I mean, Jermichael's 6'5", 235, 240 if he's anything. Yeah. And he'd come in after a game and say, oh, man. I think you feel like you've been hit by a car. He goes, yeah. I said, yeah, people don't realize that. I mean, you play one game of football in your life, your body really is never the same. You get hit so hard the whole game long that, it's a collision sport. It's not a secret that the number one selling video from the NFL is, hardest hit. Oh, yeah. It's not guys making nice handoffs.
No. We're talking with Steve March Torme. He'll be performing this Friday, the 16th. Largo Performing Arts Center. Just so people remember that we're not just sports talk here. Steve, great singer and musician, and this is a show primarily of your dad's songs, or some of your own, or what are people going to see?
It'll be a mix of a bunch of stuff. Some wonderful standards that not only Dad sang, but a number of people have sung. But I will do some of the arrangements that Dad used, just because it's just a nice thing to do. I want to talk about parts of his career with the people in Largo that haven't seen me perform or haven't heard me sing, just so they can get a point of reference. And I tell some stories about Dad. I tell some stories about my stepfather. And for those of you who are listening who don't know, my last name being March Torme, my stepfather was a gentleman named Hal March, who was the host of the $64,000 question show on television, and also a musical guy.
Good actor.
Yeah. Summer stock. He would do the music. Man, he could sing. He could hook the whole thing. But there'll be a number of standards, the tunes that people know, and a number of originals, and just a nice mix of all kinds of music.
Great. Yeah, you're going to be coming in a couple of days ahead of another offspring of a great singer. Dina Martin's going to be at Ruth Eckerd on Sunday. So I don't know if you've ever worked together. That might be a fun show sometime. You ever did?
Well, Dina and I worked together a month and a half ago.
Oh, you did? Okay.
We didn't really work together. We were on the same bill.
Yeah.
We did a show out in Los Angeles at the Cerritos Performing Arts Center, and it was myself and Dina and the Nelson twins.
Oh, okay. Ozzie Nelson was Ozzie Nelson's the grandkids of Ozzie, right? And Ozzie and Harriet, yeah.
Ricky's kids.
Right.
Ricky's kids, right.
Great.
And I've met Dina before, but I've never seen her show. She did a great job. She did a wonderful job.
Yeah. Just I don't mean to cross plug it there, but I just wanted to mention it because she's a friend of the show as well. But now you're touring around quite a bit. Do you do the live show a lot, or how often are you on the road?
Oh yeah. Well, this is my favorite thing to do. I mean, as much as it's kind of fun to do this radio show, I would be perfectly happy being on the road at least 2/3 of the year. My wife doesn't want to hear that, but she knows that's how I feel. That's my arena. That's where I'm most comfortable. And it's what I do best. So it's enjoyable for me. And since you and I last talked, I got 2 projects off the ground that are very, very tough to do. I'm not saying that like, oh, I did this because they're so hard. I'm just saying logistically they're hard to get symphony shows off the ground.
Yeah.
First of all, it takes a certain expenditure just to get arrangements, whether you write them or buy them. And fortunately, all of mine are original with my musical director. We sit down and write the arrangements. But that all costs money, and just to get a symphony show off the ground, period, because with the economy in the last 4 to 5 years, not just municipal symphonies and community symphonies, but major symphonies have gone out of business.
Right.
I mean, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra filed Chapter 11. The Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra Chapter 11. So it's tough to get shows up, and we've done this. We have a regular show and a holiday show. But since I've last talked to you, I've now performed my symphony show with 5 different symphonies, and that's just such a treat for me. It's so gratifying to get this thing going.
Well, that's great. I know a lot of those orchestras depend on donations and stuff, and when people don't have as much money, obviously it doesn't fund them quite as well. So that's sad to hear, but I'm glad you're able to keep that going, because it's an important part of every kind of community to have the kind of local orchestra to work with and to kind of bring your arrangements with it.
And especially for what I do, which is obviously pop shows, it was really important that we write interesting arrangements because, again, you and I both know that, serious fiddle players who've spent years and years learning their instrument don't necessarily want to do a concert of playing the Star Wars theme.
Right.
They want to play serious, what used to be called long-hair music. And if you can come in with a pop show where the arrangements are still challenging and at least interesting for the musicians to play, they're going to play better for you. So that's been our case. And even in the Florida area, I would love to come down and do some symphony shows down in Florida. And there are no lack of symphony orchestras down there. And I've been trying to. I've contacted a few of them there and have not been successful in getting response back. But I'm going to keep banging the door. So hopefully I'll get to do some shows down there.
Yeah, keep after it, because we have one in the Tampa Bay area, of course, and in Sarasota, but that's great. How about any CD projects coming up, Steve?
Well, we just, the latest CD I put out 3.5 years ago.
That's the one you and I talked about, right? Yeah.
Inside Out. And Steve and I are going to, we're probably going to do another CD this year, and I don't know what it's going to be yet. The last one is all original material, and it's much more from my roots, which are kind of pop roots. And I love the fact that I got a chance to sit and spend almost 2 years writing that, and then going into L.A. and recording it. But the next one, I don't know. The next one could be, a tribute to Jimmy Van Heusen or Jimmy McHugh. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I think we're going to do something this year. And maybe it'll be half original stuff and half, maybe like my show, originals and standards. We'll see.
Great. And just for the folks that are out there, you want to get a little taste, Steve has some videos up on YouTube. I know you do have a great one there with you and your dad. I think it was a small club in L.A. somewhere that he came up on stage and did a song with you. That must have been a lot of fun for you.
Well, I when I look back on this, and realized how ridiculous I acted during some of the shows, just because I wanted to have some fun with it. He was very gracious in doing this. I mean, you know, every time, I didn't ask him that often, but we did perform together, I would say 3 or 4 times on stage. He would come up and do a duet with me. And he always did. He never turned me down. He could have come up with some excuse. He could have made up something. Said, you know what, I've got something tonight, I can't do it. But he was always there for me. And I know some of those shows, as much as they were musical, also had, you know, a certain amount of just nonsense in it, because I wanted to have fun on stage. And I don't think Dad really cared for that too much. And so it was very nice of him to do it. And you're right, that was us at a club in Santa Monica that was called At My Place. And the two of us doing a duet of Lulu's Back in Town.
That's right, Lulu, yeah.
Really fun. Really fun.
Well, you did a duet on the current CD, too, on there as well. He came and recorded it, right?
The CD you're talking about, I'm sure, is called So Far.
That was the previous one. I'm sorry. You're right. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that does have a duet with Dad and myself singing Straighten Up and Fly Right. And I got fortunate enough that we actually did that live, because, you know, a lot of people who've heard Natalie's wonderful version of Unforgettable figured that when my dad passed away, I probably found a track of his and inserted my voice. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case. I called him and said, like, I'm going to do my first jazz album. How would you feel about doing a duet? We had to find a song that made sense lyrically, because most duets are, you know, male-female. And Straighten Up and Fly Right made great sense, not the least of which because it was written by Nat, and Nat was one of his great buddies. Yeah. So Dad came in, we did 2 takes. He said, that's it, I'm hungry, I'm going to lunch. I said, great, we're done. And it worked out terrifically.
You had kind of a scat contest, too, and it's funny. I like that.
Yes,
Doing scat. Well, you picked up, you have the genes. So you have the scat genes. You held your own.
Well, yeah, and that's the question I get asked after shows. So did your dad teach you how to scat sing? I said, I don't know if you can teach someone how to scat sing. You know, you either get on stage and you know how to do that and you can improvise or not. I said, no, Dad and I never discussed that. But as you heard on the record, I just kind of give up at the end and say, you win.
That's right. You win. I think your dad and Ella are probably the 2 greatest that I ever heard doing that. I don't know how you learn to do that. It's got to be born in you somehow to do that. But I think your father and Ella Fitzgerald were the 2 best.
Well, he idolized her. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Dad was not a big fan of rock and roll music or even R&B music, but there were certain singers that he was a fan of. I mean, he was a fan of Jack Jones. Yeah. He was a fan of Matt Monroe's, but Ella was God to him. And he wrote a book called My Singing Teachers, and he includes Ella in there. And you can either get up in the morning and go, do that, or you can't.
That's right.
And obviously she could, and Dad could. Al Jarreau's a good scat singer.
Yeah, Al Jarreau.
And a gentleman who didn't do it that often, but I saw him, and this is completely off the subject, but what the heck, we've already talked about Jose Canseco. So I saw a guy in a show, Liza Minnelli and I have been friends for a long time. And, you know, we don't see each other very much. I live in Wisconsin, she lives in New York, and we have different lives, obviously. But when I was in New York about 10 years ago, she invited me to go, it had been longer, 15 years ago, she invited me to go see a show. And it was a Broadway show, and it starred this guy, and I was literally so taken with his talent, his ability to do everything on stage, that I was sitting there and it was just embarrassing. I was sitting there at the end of the first half with tears in my eyes, and there was nothing sad in the show. And I just was literally overcome by this guy. He was a tremendous singer, and a tremendous actor, and one of the greatest dancers on the planet, and it was Greg Hines.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gregory Hines just blew me away. I mean, he just killed me. His professionalism and his ability was just overwhelming. I don't know if people knew that much, but boy, he was great. And he did some scat singing, and I said, oh, yeah. Someone's got it down. If you can tap dance that well, you should be able to scat sing.
Yeah, he did actually did a pretty good movie called Tap, kind of a tribute to the old Tap band. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, great performer. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago, but yeah, at a very young age. But yeah, great.
Yes, he did. And his protege, Savion Glover, was in that.
Right.
Sandman, all those guys, all the great, tap dancers.
Sammy was in that. Yeah, I think that was Sammy Davis's last movie or last performance, I believe, before he got ill.
Yeah, and not a bad tap dancer, Sammy Davis.
No. People tend to forget, though, how good a dancer he was. You tend to see him more on TV singing, but he was a great dancer. Yeah.
Yeah, he did all that kind of, when the 70s came along and Sammy kind of got criticized for doing all the boogaloo stuff,
right?
White collars, and they go, man, he's so groovy, man. They forget his tap dancing was off the charts. He was a tremendous tap dancer.
Oh yeah.
And I guess a lot of those guys in that era, that was one of the skills you had to learn. If you were going to be a star and you were going to do motion pictures and all that, you at the very least had to know how to soft shoe, and all those guys could do that. Sinatra and Bing Crosby, and obviously Fred Astaire, and all those people could dance, and it's a great skill. It's hard to do.
Yeah, Bob Hope, he was a good dancer as well. They had to learn that in vaudeville, so that was something.
Yep.
I know it kept you longer than we thought. I did want to ask you. You brought up Liza Minnelli, of course, the daughter of Judy Garland. Your dad, Mel, was the musical director on her variety show. Did he ever tell you any stories about that? I've heard it was pretty wild, that the whole singing.
Not that we can tell on this show.
Oh, damn. I want to hear some.
Well, I think his feeling about her, and, if Liza hears this one, she won't. She would not be thrilled. But I think Dad had great reverence and respect for Judy Garland's talent. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think Judy Garland, from a very early age, was put in a position where she ended up, physically the way she did because she was so dependent on so many things to go to sleep and to get up in the morning. That's, I'm not telling people out of school here. That's pretty well known from the time she did Wizard of Oz on. And she was this tremendous star with all this talent. I mean, you watch the stuff she did in Wizard of Oz and all the movies she made with Mickey Rooney. She was tremendous. She was great. She was really great. She was a beautiful singer. And unfortunately, she just really got hooked on so much stuff that it became difficult for him to work on that TV show with her because she was just moody. From what I understand, it was tough, and understandably so. And, Dad being the guy that the most substances he ever did was 2 milkshakes. So I'm sure it was tough for him to deal with. Again, I'm not telling tales out of school there either. Dad had quite a sweet tooth. So anyway, interesting pairing because they were both, very talented musical people.
MGM stars too. I mean, your dad worked for MGM, so they knew each other from there, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. You can YouTube a Christmas special that they did, and it's very cute. My dad shows up at Judy Garland's house, and Liza's there, and her son's there. And it's one of those kind of family specials, and Dad shows up with a bunch of carolers, and she says, "Oh, Mel, come on in." And, obviously all been rehearsed, and he comes in, and she says, "Oh, would you sit down and play that song for me?" So he sits down to play the Christmas song.
Yeah.
And she messes up the words.
Oh, really?
And it's live. So they keep going, but you can see the quick look on his face. He hit it pretty well, but I know better. And she said, she said, I forget what the lyric was, but she said something like, he's bringing sleighs and lots of goodies on his sleigh. She just kind of messed up. And he raised his eyebrows for a second, and the look was kind of like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Not happy.
So, not thrilled. So I'm sure that there were trials and tribulations, and you have 2 very strong personalities and egos there too. So, I'm sure it was interesting being on that set.
They have the DVDs out, and I watched a bunch of those shows, and they always seemed, from like week to week, that they didn't know the format of that show. They kept changing it around. I know that was your dad's situation, but I mean, they kept changing producers. They brought in Jerry Van Dyke. They had some weird comedy stuff that didn't really work, and then finally they said, let's just let Judy sing, and I think those were the better shows. But yeah.
Probably so. Oh yeah, do what you do best. My guess is she probably from week to week said, let's try this. Let's try this.
I think that's what it was, yeah. Well, I didn't want to get off the track there, but we're talking about Steve March Torme. You can see this Friday, the 16th of March, Largo Performing Arts Center, 8 o'clock show. And Steve, it's always great to talk not only music, but sports with you. And where can people hear you again? Music of Your Life Network, right? Which is on locally here.
And if they want to, they can, which would be great. they can stream the show that I do here. You go to avenuemusic.com. It's our station is 91.1 The Avenue out of Wisconsin, but it can stream it live on your computer. And I'm proud of the work we're doing on it. Let me ask you a question. Since I am coming to Largo,
sure.
Where is the closest minor league ballpark?
There's a bunch. You're not going to be too far from the Phillies in Clearwater. You're going to be near the Blue Jays in Dunedin.
Dunedin, right?
Those are the two closest. Nobody trains in St. Pete anymore, so those are the two closest.
Right.
Yeah. If you come to Tampa, you can see the Yankees.
Yeah, right. Well, I went, next time we talk, I will tell you about going to Yankee Fantasy Camp in 2007.
Oh, great. We'll save that for the next time we chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been covering the Orioles down here in Sarasota, covering some of their games, and you got the Pirates and Bradenton. So you got a lot of teams in your area. If you have a few days, hang around. You can see some baseball.
Yeah, I'd love to. So who do you? I know you got to go. I'm just last question. Who do you follow? I mean, who do you root for?
I still consider myself a New Yorker, Steve. So Yankees. I'm still a New York sports fan. I'm a Tampa Bay fan. Tampa Bay teams are fine, but I still pull for the New York teams.
Well, I grew up a Yankee fan. I was living in Westchester County, New York, so they are still they're still near and dear to my heart.
And they're looking pretty good again, although I saw the Red Sox yesterday over at playing the Orioles. They look like they're going to be better. After that collapse last year, I don't think that's going to happen again. So they're going to give our Yankees a run, I'm afraid.
Without question. And Bobby Valentine is going to straighten out that clubhouse real fast. The boys will be gone. And they make some nice pickups. And Adrian Gonzalez is a tremendous ball player. Yeah. So they got a good club. But, the Yankees pitching, it gets it all better, which I think it has. They had to get rid of, what's his name, the starter that came over from...
Burnett. AJ Burnett.
Yeah, I mean, poor AJ, he just never got on track at all last year. And I think they got a shot to be, the Yanks again. We'll see.
He pitched more like Carol Burnett.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I've been saving that one.
All right, my friend.
Okay, Steve, always great to talk. SteveMarchTorme.com is your website, right? People get a hold of, check that out as well for your CDs. And we'll talk to you, we won't wait a year, we'll talk to you sometime this summer if we can. That'd be great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Steve March Torme has been our guest.